Imagine holding an object in your hands that defies everything we think we know about history. A tool so precise, so advanced, that even today's brightest minds with cutting-edge technology can't figure out how to remake it. This isn't science fiction. It's the reality of countless artifacts left behind by ancient and medieval craftsmen. These weren't just tools. They were masterpieces of ingenuity, born from minds that saw possibilities we're only beginning to grasp. From blades that never dulled to devices that predicted the movements of the stars, these creations whisper secrets of knowledge lost to time. What if I told you that some of history's most astonishing inventions weren't the work of modern genius, but of forgotten artisans whose skills surpassed our own? Picture this: a sword so sharp it could slice through armor like paper, yet flexible enough to bend without breaking, or a tiny mechanism no larger than a shoebox, capable of tracking the paths of planets with jaw-dropping accuracy centuries before the telescope was invented. These weren't lucky accidents. They were the products of deep understanding, of techniques honed over generations and then, inexplicably, vanished. How could something so revolutionary just disappear? Wars, collapsed empires, the slow erosion of time, each of these treasures carries not just the fingerprints of its maker, but the shadow of the world that let it slip away. And that's the haunting question at the heart of today's journey. What else did they know that we don't? That's exactly what we're about to explore. Over the next 30 revelations, we'll uncover objects that shouldn't exist, artifacts that challenge textbooks, defy logic, and sometimes straddle the line between myth and reality. Some were weapons that burned on water, others were maps of lands supposedly undiscovered, and a few remain so enigmatic that we still can't decipher their purpose. But here's what ties them all together. They're proof that human brilliance isn't linear. Innovation isn't just about moving forward. Sometimes it's about rediscovering what was already there. So if you're ready to question what you thought you knew about the past, to see history not as a steady march of progress but as a tapestry of luminous, fleeting genius, then let's begin. The past has left us clues. It's time to follow them. Buried beneath the waves for over 2,000 years, the Antikythera Mechanism emerged from a shipwreck not as a rusted relic, but as a puzzle that would rewrite history. Discovered by sponge divers off the coast of Greece in 1901, this bronze marvel about the size of a shoebox was initially mistaken for a piece of nautical debris. But when archaeologists cleaned away the centuries of corrosion, they uncovered something extraordinary: a labyrinth of interlocking gears, precisely calibrated dials, and inscriptions that revealed its true purpose. This wasn't just a tool, it was a celestial calculator capable of predicting lunar eclipses, tracking the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games, and even modeling the irregular motions of planets with staggering accuracy. What makes the Antikythera Mechanism so baffling isn't just its complexity, it's the timing. Crafted around 80 BC, it predates devices of similar sophistication by over 1,000 years. The level of miniaturization and precision in its gear trains rivals that of 18th century Swiss clocks, yet it was created in an era when even simple machines were rare. The Greeks, known for their philosophy and art, somehow engineered a device that required an understanding of astronomy, metallurgy, and mechanics far beyond what historians thought possible. How did they cut gears with teeth so fine, or align them to mirror the cosmos without the aid of magnifying lenses or precision tools? Modern attempts to recreate the mechanism have only deepened the mystery. Using X-ray tomography, scientists have peered inside its corroded shell, mapping gear ratios that correspond to the cycles of the moon and sun. Yet even with blueprints derived from these scans, reconstructions often fall short. The original's gears fit together with near-perfect tolerances, a feat that suggests the Greeks had standardized measurement systems or manufacturing techniques lost to time. Some researchers speculate it might be the work of a lone genius, perhaps inspired by earlier Babylonian astronomical records. Others believe it hints at a broader tradition of mechanical engineering, with most examples lost to the ravages of history. Then there's the haunting question of what else might have existed. The Antikythera Mechanism was found on a Roman cargo ship, likely looted from Greece. Was it one of many or a singular masterpiece? Cicero wrote of a similar device built by Archimedes, but no others have surfaced. If this technology was more widespread, its disappearance speaks to a darker truth: how easily knowledge can vanish when empires fall. The mechanism's very existence forces us to reconsider the narrative of human progress. Perhaps the ancient world wasn't a stepping stone to modernity, but a parallel path, one where brilliance flickered brightly, only to be swallowed by the shadows of time. If there was ever a blade that deserved the title of legend, it was Damascus steel. Picture a sword so sharp it could split a silk scarf in midair, yet so strong it could cleave through armor without chipping. These weren't just weapons, they were masterpieces, forged in the fires of medieval workshops across the Middle East and coveted by warriors from the Crusades to the Mughal Empire. But what made them truly extraordinary wasn't just their performance, it was the mystery behind their creation. The techniques used to produce Damascus steel vanished centuries ago, leaving modern metallurgists scratching their heads. The secret lay in the steel's unique structure. Under a microscope, genuine Damascus blades reveal a swirling pattern resembling flowing water or wood grain, a signature caused by bands of ultra-hard cementite mixed with softer iron. This wasn't just for show. Those alternating layers gave the metal an almost magical combination of flexibility and edge retention. But here's the catch: no one today can replicate it exactly. Modern experiments using high-purity ores and precise forging methods produce blades that look the part, with etched patterns mimicking the originals, but they lack the same legendary performance. So what went missing? The answer might lie in the raw materials themselves. Medieval blacksmiths used wootz steel, a type of crucible steel imported from India and Sri Lanka. This wasn't just any iron ore, it contained trace amounts of vanadium, molybdenum, and other rare elements, likely absorbed from the unique geology of those regions. When smelted at precise temperatures and worked through a painstaking process of folding and forging, these impurities aligned into the distinctive crystalline patterns. But by the 18th century, the mines producing wootz steel were exhausted, and the exact smelting techniques faded into obscurity. Some researchers believe the loss wasn't just about materials, but about the ritual of forging. Historical accounts describe blades being quenched in exotic liquids, everything from dragon's blood, likely a plant resin to urine, suggesting blacksmiths understood chemical treatments we're only now rediscovering. Others point to the importance of temperature control. Too hot and the carbon disperses unevenly, too cold and the layers won't fuse. It's possible the masters of Damascus steel guarded their methods so closely that they died with them, leaving behind only their indestructible creations as clues. Today, scientists are piecing together the puzzle using 21st century tools. Electron microscopes have revealed nanowires of carbon nanotubes in some antique blades, a feature thought to be a modern discovery. Could medieval smiths have accidentally stumbled upon nanotechnology? It's a tantalizing thought, but one that raises even more questions. If they achieved such feats without understanding the science, what else might they have known without leaving a manual? Every Damascus blade is a silent testament to a craft that soared to unimaginable heights, then vanished like smoke from the forge. And that's the real tragedy, not just the loss of a recipe, but the realization that history's greatest innovations can slip through our fingers, leaving only echoes of their brilliance. Imagine a weapon so fearsome that it could turn the tide of entire wars, one that clung to ships like liquid death, burning even as it floated on water. That was Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's most closely guarded secret and a technological marvel that kept enemies at bay for centuries. Described by terrified adversaries as unquenchable, this incendiary substance was more than just a tool of war. It was a psychological weapon, striking dread into the hearts of anyone who faced it. The mere sight of Byzantine dromon ships equipped with their bronze siphons was enough to send fleets into retreat. Yet, despite its legendary status, the exact formula has been lost to history, leaving modern scientists to piece together clues from ancient texts and failed experiments. What made Greek fire so terrifying wasn't just its ability to burn on water, it was how it behaved. Unlike ordinary flames, it couldn't be doused with water. In fact, some accounts suggest water only intensified the inferno. It clung to surfaces like tar, spreading rapidly and resisting all attempts to smother it. Historians have speculated for centuries about its ingredients. Some point to crude petroleum drawn from surface-level deposits near the Black Sea, mixed with resins or sulfur to thicken it. Others argue for quicklime, a substance that ignites on contact with water, explaining its paradoxical reaction. But here's the problem. No modern recreation has ever matched the sheer destructive power described in medieval chronicles. The secret likely lay not just in the ingredients but in the delivery system. Byzantine engineers designed specialized pumps and pressurized nozzles to spray the fiery liquid in arcs over enemy ships, a feat of engineering that suggests an advanced understanding of fluid dynamics. These weren't crude pots of burning oil. They were precision instruments of war, requiring careful handling and exact mixtures. The secrecy surrounding Greek fire was so extreme that only a handful of artisans and the imperial family knew the full recipe. Emperors reportedly passed it down verbally, fearing written records could fall into enemy hands. When Constantinople finally fell in 1453, the knowledge may have died with the last keepers of the flame. Today, chemists and historians continue to debate the missing pieces. Could the Byzantines have used distilled petroleum, a process thought to be invented much later? Or was there a forgotten catalyst like saltpeter or naphtha that gave the fire its otherworldly persistence? The closest modern equivalent, napalm, shares some properties but lacks the same mystique and the same resistance to water. Perhaps the real lesson of Greek fire isn't just about chemistry, but about how easily knowledge can vanish when guarded too closely. In their obsession with secrecy, the Byzantines may have ensured that their greatest weapon would never be replicated, leaving us with only echoes of its terror and a burning question: what else have we lost to the shadows of history? Walk through the streets of Rome today, and you'll find structures that have defied time itself: the Pantheon's dome, towering aqueducts, and sprawling harbors, all standing strong after 2,000 years of earthquakes, wars, and weathering. Meanwhile, modern concrete bridges and buildings often crumble within decades. What did the Romans know that we don't? The answer lies in a recipe so ingenious that scientists are still unraveling its secrets. Their concrete wasn't just durable, it was alive, capable of healing its own cracks like skin knitting back together. At the heart of this ancient marvel was a simple yet revolutionary ingredient: volcanic ash. The Romans mixed it with lime and seawater to create a material that actually grew stronger over time. When modern researchers analyzed samples under microscopes, they discovered something astonishing. Tiny crystals of a mineral called stretlingite formed within the concrete, filling micro cracks as they appeared. But here's the twist: this self-repairing property wasn't just luck. The Romans intentionally used ash from specific volcanoes, like those near Pozzuoli, rich in reactive silica and alumina. These elements reacted with seawater to form new minerals, essentially giving the concrete an immune system against decay. Yet even with this knowledge, our attempts to replicate Roman concrete fall short. Why? Because the devil's in the details. Modern Portland cement, the backbone of today's construction, relies on high-temperature firing and rapid curing, creating a brittle structure prone to cracks. Roman concrete, by contrast, was mixed at lower temperatures and cured slowly, sometimes for years, allowing its crystalline structure to develop fully. There's also evidence they added animal blood or milk to alter the chemistry, though the exact role of these additives remains unclear. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in the way Romans used their concrete underwater. While modern versions degrade in saltwater, Roman harbors like Portus Cosanus thrived in it. Studies show seawater actually triggered a chemical chain reaction, forming minerals that reinforced the material. This wasn't just resilience, it was a kind of alchemy, turning environmental threats into strength. Today, engineers are racing to decode these principles, hoping to create seawalls that repair themselves or skyscrapers that last millennia. But until we crack the full recipe, Roman concrete stands as both a triumph and a taunt, a reminder that the past still holds secrets we've yet to master. The real mystery isn't just the how, but the why. How did Roman builders without microscopes or chemistry labs stumble upon such an advanced formula? Was it trial and error, or did they inherit knowledge from even older civilizations? And what other revolutionary techniques vanished when their empire fell? Every crumbling modern structure whispers the same humbling truth. Sometimes progress means looking backward. Picture this: a Viking longship cutting through the foggy waters of the North Atlantic, its crew steering confidently despite the overcast sky blotting out the sun. How did they navigate such treacherous conditions without compasses or clear landmarks? The answer might lie in a seemingly ordinary crystal, one that could reveal the sun's position even when hidden behind clouds. This is the legend of the Viking Sunstone, a tool so ingenious it straddles the line between myth and cutting-edge science. Ancient Norse sagas mention a solarstein used to locate the sun on overcast days, but for centuries historians dismissed it as folklore. Then, in the 1960s, a Danish archaeologist proposed a radical theory. What if the Sunstone was a natural crystal like Iceland spar, a form of calcite that polarizes light? When light passes through this crystal, it splits into two beams, creating a double image. By rotating the stone until the brightness of both images matched, a skilled navigator could pinpoint the sun's location with eerie accuracy, even at twilight or through dense fog. Modern experiments have put this theory to the test with startling results. Researchers using Iceland spar on cloudy days could determine the sun's position within a few degrees, matching the precision described in Viking accounts. Even more impressive, a team studying a shipwreck off the coast of Alderney found a piece of calcite near navigational tools, fueling speculation it was a sunstone in use when the vessel sank. Yet here's the catch: no sunstone has ever been definitively linked to Viking navigation. The Alderney crystal might be a coincidence, and without an artifact explicitly tied to Norse explorers, the mystery endures. What makes the Sunstone so fascinating isn't just its potential functionality, it's what it implies about Viking understanding of optics. Polarized light wasn't formally studied until the 19th century, yet the Norse may have harnessed its properties centuries earlier through sheer observation and experimentation. Did they discover this trick by accident, noticing how certain crystals reacted to light under specific conditions? Or was it knowledge passed down from even older seafaring cultures? The broader question is just as compelling. If Vikings used tools this advanced, what else might they have known that never made it into the historical record? Their mastery of shipbuilding, astronomy, and now possibly optics suggests a culture with an almost scientific approach to problem-solving, one that didn't just rely on brute strength, but on keen observation of the natural world. The Sunstone, whether confirmed or not, serves as a reminder that history's primitive societies often held secrets we're only beginning to decipher. And that's the real treasure here, not just a crystal, but the tantalizing possibility that the past was far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. Buried in the basement of the National Museum of Iraq lies an unassuming clay jar, roughly the size of a grapefruit, that could rewrite the history of technology. Known as the Baghdad Battery, this peculiar artifact dates back to the Parthian or Sasanian period, around 2,000 years ago. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than an ancient storage vessel, but inside lies a tantalizing puzzle: a rolled copper sheet, an iron rod, and traces of a long evaporated acidic substance like vinegar or wine. Put these elements together and you have the basic components of a primitive electrochemical cell, a device capable of generating a small electric current. The discovery, made in 1936 near Baghdad, sparked immediate controversy. Could this really be evidence that ancient civilizations harnessed electricity centuries before Galvani and Volta's famous experiments in the 1700s? Skeptics argue it might have been a storage jar for sacred scrolls, with the iron rod merely acting as a spindle. But the presence of corrosion from an acidic agent suggests something far more intriguing. When filled with an electrolyte like grape juice, reconstructions of the Baghdad battery have produced between 0.8 and 2 volts of electricity, not enough to power a light bulb, but sufficient for electroplating gold onto silver or creating subtle tingling sensations in religious rituals. What's truly fascinating is how this aligns with other historical oddities. Ancient texts describe gold-coated objects with no clear explanation of how the gilding was achieved. Could electroplating have been a guarded artisan's secret? Even more compelling are accounts from Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, who mentioned gold being restored using mysterious methods involving vinegar and iron. Was this a coded reference to electrochemical techniques? Without direct evidence, we're left with a mosaic of possibilities, none definitive, but collectively hard to dismiss. Yet the Baghdad battery raises as many questions as it answers. If it was indeed a power source, why haven't more been found? Was it a one-off experiment or part of a wider tradition of electrical tinkering lost to time? The absence of wires or conductors in the archaeological record makes it unlikely the ancients had anything resembling a modern circuit, but perhaps they didn't need one. Some researchers propose the electricity was used medicinally. Early texts describe using electric fish to numb pain, suggesting a cultural familiarity with the body's response to current. Could the battery have been a primitive therapeutic device, delivering mild shocks to treat ailments? The truth may never be fully known. Wars and looting have scattered Iraq's archaeological treasures, and the original Baghdad battery's provenance remains murky. But its very existence challenges our assumptions about the timeline of innovation. Maybe humanity's relationship with electricity isn't a straight line from Franklin's kite to Edison's bulb, but a spiral, with flashes of brilliance appearing, vanishing, and reappearing across millennia. The Baghdad battery stands as a quiet testament to the ingenuity of the ancient world, whispering a provocative question: how many other firsts were actually rediscoveries? Discovered in 1908 amid the ruins of Crete's Phaistos Palace, this clay disc about the size of a dinner plate holds one of archaeology's most stubborn secrets. Unlike other ancient texts carved or painted by hand, the Phaistos Disc is unique. Its symbols were pressed into wet clay using individual stamps, making it the earliest known example of movable type printing, a technology not widely used again until Gutenberg's press over 3,000 years later. But here's what truly baffles scholars: not a single matching artifact has ever been found. No other discs, no stamp sets, not even fragments with similar symbols. It's as if this object appeared out of nowhere, a lone whisper from a silent civilization. The disc's 241 symbols spiral inward like a snake coiling, divided into sections by etched lines. These aren't random doodles. They depict everything from human figures and fish to shields and beehives, arranged in what appears to be deliberate groupings. Yet, despite over a century of study, no one has convincingly cracked its code. Is it a hymn to a forgotten god, a trader's inventory, an early board game? Theories range from the plausible to the fantastical. Some linguists argue the symbols represent syllables of a lost Minoan dialect, while others see them as purely pictographic, conveying meaning through images alone. One daring hypothesis even suggests it's a geometric proof, with the symbols acting as mathematical notation. What makes the Phaistos Disc so tantalizing isn't just its undeciphered message, it's the implications of its craftsmanship. Creating a set of stamp seals for each symbol would have required extraordinary effort for a one-off item. This suggests the disc might be a copy of a more widespread text, or part of a larger tradition wiped out by disasters like the Thera eruption. Recent CT scans reveal subtle variations in symbol depth, hinting that the stamps were reused and recarved over time, like a primitive printing press. Could this have been an early attempt at mass communication, snuffed out before it could spread? The mystery deepens when you consider where it was found. The Phaistos Palace was a hub of Minoan culture, a civilization fluent in linear, a script, yet the disc symbols share almost no overlap with known Minoan writing. Some resemble hieroglyphs from distant Anatolia or Egypt, fueling speculation about a cultural crossroads where ideas converged, but without a Rosetta Stone equivalent, a bilingual key to unlock its meaning, the disc remains mute. Even advanced AI algorithms trained on ancient languages have failed to find patterns definitive enough for translation. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't what the disc says, but why it exists in isolation. Most breakthrough technologies leave traces: prototypes, failed experiments, evolutionary steps. The Phaistos Disc has none. Its very existence defies the usual narrative of incremental progress, standing instead as a brilliant anomaly. Was its method deemed impractical and abandoned, or does it point to a parallel path of innovation, one that vanished when its makers did? Every theory leads back to the same humbling truth: some secrets refuse to be unearthed, no matter how hard we dig. Hidden away in the vaults of Yale University's Voynich Library lies a book that has defied comprehension for over 6 centuries, the Voynich Manuscript. Imagine flipping through its 240 fragile vellum pages only to find yourself staring at a language unlike any other. Flowing, alien script winding around illustrations of plants that don't exist, women bathing in emerald green liquid, and astrological charts filled with unknown constellations. This isn't just a puzzle, it's a full-blown enigma wrapped in the skin of a 15th century codex, one that's resisted every attempt at decipherment, from Renaissance cryptographers to modern supercomputers. What makes the Voynich Manuscript so utterly baffling is how it straddles the line between meticulous craftsmanship and utter absurdity. The text, written in an alphabet of 20 to 30 unique characters, follows patterns that suggest a real language. Words repeat in predictable ways, sentences have distinct rhythms, yet it aligns with no known linguistic system. Statistical analyses reveal quirks that defy natural speech, like overuse of certain syllables or an absence of corrections, as if the writer never hesitated. Then there are the illustrations, lush, colorful, and deeply strange. Herbal sections depict flora with twisted roots and bulbous leaves unmatched by any real botany. Astronomical diagrams show celestial formations unrecognizable to modern astronomy. And perhaps most haunting, the biological section features nude female figures floating in interconnected tubes of vibrant liquid, their purpose as inscrutable as the text itself. Theories about its origins range from scholarly to fantastical. Some argue it's an elaborate hoax, perhaps concocted by 16th century bookseller Wilfrid Voynich himself, who brought the manuscript to light in 1912. Yet carbon dating places its vellum between 1404 and 1438, centuries before his time. Others propose it's a lost language, like a remnant of the extinct Nahuatl or a constructed tongue for esoteric knowledge. The most tantalizing hypothesis, that it's written in an uncrackable cipher, designed to shield alchemical secrets or heretical ideas from prying eyes. Renaissance figures like John Dee and Roger Bacon were rumored to own it, fueling speculation about its ties to occult circles. But here's the catch: even the world's top cryptographers, including teams that broke Nazi codes in World War II, have failed to find meaningful patterns. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. AI algorithms trained on hundreds of languages detect faint glimmers of structure, enough to hint at intentionality, not enough to translate. X-ray fluorescence scans reveal inks consistent with medieval recipes, ruling out later forgeries. Yet the more we study it, the more the manuscript seems to mock our efforts. Its very existence challenges our assumptions about history's linear progress. How could something so detailed, so deliberate, remain utterly opaque in an age where we've decoded genomes and sent probes beyond the solar system? Perhaps the real lesson of the Voynich Manuscript isn't about solving a puzzle, but about embracing the limits of human knowledge. In a world where we're accustomed to having answers at our fingertips, here's an artifact that refuses to comply. It stands as a testament to the possibility that some secrets are meant to stay buried, or that brilliance from the past might operate on a logic we've yet to rediscover. And that's what keeps us coming back, not the hope of cracking it, but the thrill of standing at the edge of the unknowable, peering into the abyss of history's silent whispers. Among the treasures pulled from Viking burial sites and riverbeds across Europe, few artifacts command as much awe as the Ulfberht swords. These weren't just weapons, they were masterworks of metallurgy, bearing a name etched into their blades like a signature of perfection: Ulfberht. Dating from the 9th to the 11th centuries, these swords were so superior to their contemporaries that they might as well have been from another world. While most European blades of the era were brittle, prone to shattering in battle, Ulfberht swords flexed and held their edge, their steel so pure it rivaled modern alloys. The mystery isn't just their quality, it's how Viking smiths achieved such purity centuries before the industrial furnaces that made high-carbon steel commonplace. The secret lies in the crucible. Unlike the bloomery furnaces used across medieval Europe, which produced lumpy, slag-filled iron, Ulfberht blades were forged from steel with a carbon content of around 1.5%, nearly identical to today's high-grade tool steel. This wasn't just a lucky batch. Metallurgists have identified around 170 Ulfberht swords, all sharing the same extraordinary composition. The implications are staggering. To reach such high temperatures over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, Viking smiths would have needed furnaces far hotter than anything else in Europe at the time. So how did they do it? One theory points to trade routes stretching all the way to the Middle East and Central Asia. Crucible steel, known as woots, was being produced in Persia and India during this period, and its properties match the Ulfberht blades almost perfectly. Did Viking traders bring back ingots of this exotic material, or perhaps the knowledge to recreate it? Some Ulfberht swords contain traces of rare metals like vanadium, which align with ores found in modern-day Iran. But here's the puzzle. Transporting raw steel over such distances would have been prohibitively expensive, and no evidence of large-scale crucible steel production exists in Viking lands. Another possibility is that the Ulfberht makers stumbled upon an advanced technique lost to time. Sagas describe mystic forges fueled by dragon's breath, a poetic hint at bellows systems or furnace designs capable of reaching unprecedented temperatures. Recent experiments using reconstructed Viking-era crucibles and charcoal fuels have shown it's possible to achieve the necessary heat, but only under precise, labor-intensive conditions. Perhaps the Ulfberht workshops guarded their methods as tightly as trade secrets, passing them down orally until wars, migrations, or the Black Death silenced them forever. Then there's the inscription itself. The name Ulfberht appears on blades spanning 2 centuries, suggesting it wasn't a single smith but a guild or dynasty. Was this a brand, a mark of quality control in an era when most swords were anonymous tools? The consistency of the steel supports this idea, a standardized process honed over generations. Yet by the 12th century, the Ulfberht tradition vanished, and Europe wouldn't see steel of comparable quality again until the Industrial Revolution. What makes these swords so haunting isn't just their lost technology, but what they reveal about the Vikings themselves. Far from the barbaric raiders of popular myth, they were savvy traders and engineers capable of feats we still struggle to explain. Every Ulfberht blade is a silent challenge, cutting through our assumptions about the past and leaving us with a razor-sharp question. How many other leaps of genius have been forgotten, buried in the silt of history? Buried beneath the earth for over 3,600 years, the Nebra sky disk emerged not as a simple ornament, but as a window into the Bronze Age mind. Discovered by looters in 1999 near the German town of Nebra, this unassuming bronze circle, about the size of a dinner plate, holds the oldest known concrete depiction of the cosmos. At first glance, its gold leaf symbols seem abstract, a crescent moon, a full moon or sun, and a scattering of stars, but look closer and you'll notice something extraordinary. The cluster of 7 stars between them matches the Pleiades, a celestial marker used by ancient cultures to predict planting seasons and navigate seas. This wasn't just art, it was a sophisticated fusion of astronomy and myth, crafted by hands that saw the sky not as a mystery, but as a map. What makes the disk so revolutionary is its precision. The angles between the solstice markers added later around the disk's edge align perfectly with astronomical events visible from Mittelberg Hill, where it was found. This suggests an intimate knowledge of the solar cycle, possibly used to synchronize lunar and solar calendars. But here's the real shock. It predates similar Greek and Babylonian astronomical tools by nearly 1,000 years. How did a culture without written records or advanced mathematics encode such complex celestial knowledge into metal? The answer might lie in generations of naked eye observation. Imagine Bronze Age priests or farmers tracking the heavens for decades, passing down patterns through oral tradition until someone had the brilliance to etch them into permanence. Yet the disk's purpose remains hotly debated. Some scholars argue it was a practical tool, its gold arcs marking the solstices to guide agricultural rituals. Others see it as a sacred object, its materials alone speaking volumes: bronze from Cornwall, gold from Cornwall and Central Europe, suggesting a pan-European network of trade and shared belief. The most tantalizing theory comes from its final modification: two opposing arcs along the rim, added later, which some interpret as sun boats carrying the celestial bodies through the underworld at night. This would make the disk not just a calculator, but a cosmological model, blending science and spirituality in ways we're only beginning to understand. Modern technology has peeled back even more layers. X-ray fluorescence reveals the disk was reworked multiple times over centuries, like a living document updated with new discoveries. The Pleiades, for instance, were originally depicted with 7 stars, but one was later removed, perhaps reflecting a supernova's disappearance from the night sky. Such details suggest the disk wasn't just a static artifact, but part of an evolving tradition of sky lore. The real mystery isn't just how they made it, but why this level of sophistication appears so early and so alone. No other Bronze Age European artifacts show comparable astronomical detail. Was the disk a lone masterpiece, or the sole survivor of a broader tradition lost to time? Its very existence forces us to reconsider the capabilities of proliferate societies. These weren't primitive people groping toward understanding. They were meticulous observers who turned the vault of heaven into a tangible guide for survival and worship. The Nebra sky disk doesn't just challenge our timeline of scientific progress, it shatters the arrogant assumption that ancient minds were any less brilliant than our own. In the year 132, nearly 2,000 years before modern seismology, a Chinese polymath named Zhang unveiled a device that seemed to defy the limits of ancient science: a bronze vessel adorned with 8 dragon heads, each clutching a metal ball above the open mouths of 8 bronze toads. This was no decorative sculpture, but the world's first earthquake detector, capable of sensing tremors from hundreds of miles away with uncanny accuracy. The brilliance of Zhang Heng's seismoscope wasn't just its existence, it was how it worked without a single modern sensor or electrical component, relying instead on pure mechanical ingenuity. Historical records describe its operation with poetic precision. When an earthquake struck, even faint vibrations would trigger one of the dragon heads to release its ball into the waiting toad's mouth below. The direction of the fallen ball pointed toward the quake's epicenter, while the force of the drop hinted at its intensity. But here's what leaves modern engineers speechless: accounts claim it once detected an earthquake 400 miles away that hadn't yet been felt locally. Days later, messengers arrived confirming the disaster exactly where the seismoscope had indicated. How could a 2,000-year-old device outperform 19th-century seismographs, which often missed distant tremors altogether? The secret likely lay in its pendulum system. Scholars reconstructing the design believe a central column suspended inside the vessel acted like an inverted pendulum, with delicate mechanisms amplifying subtle ground movements. Some theories suggest mercury-filled channels or weighted gears helped translate vibrations into directional signals, but the original blueprints, if they ever existed, are long lost. What's undeniable is the sophistication of its calibration. Unlike early modern seismographs, which required direct ground contact and often failed to distinguish between local noise and distant quakes, Zhang Heng's design appears to have filtered out minor disturbances, focusing only on true seismic waves. Modern attempts to recreate the seismoscope have yielded mixed results. A 2007 replica built by Chinese scientists managed to detect simulated earthquakes, but with less precision than the ancient accounts describe. This gap hints at lost nuances, perhaps a proprietary alloy for the pendulum, or a tuning method passed down orally among imperial craftsmen. The device's fate mirrors so many ancient marvels, celebrated in its time, then forgotten as dynasties fell, only to resurface centuries later as a tantalizing what-if. Zhang Heng himself embodied the paradox of his invention. A poet, astronomer, and engineer, he represented a peak of Han Dynasty innovation, where art and science weren't separate disciplines but intertwined ways of understanding the world. His seismoscope wasn't just a tool, it was a philosophical statement reflecting the ancient Chinese belief that heaven and earth communicated through signs. Today, as we struggle to predict earthquakes with billion-dollar satellite networks, his bronze dragons whisper a humbling lesson. Sometimes, the most advanced solutions aren't the most complex, but the most elegantly attuned to nature's subtle language. And that's the real tremor this artifact sends through history, not just proof of ancient genius, but a challenge to our assumptions about progress itself. Held in the dim light of a museum case, the Lycurgus cup looks unremarkable, just an ancient Roman drinking vessel carved with scenes of mythological figures. But tilt it toward a light source and something magical happens. The glass shifts from a deep, opaque green to a glowing translucent red, as if filled with liquid fire. This isn't just artistic flair. It's a feat of nanotechnology dating back to the 4th century, one that modern scientists still struggle to replicate. The secret: the cup's glass contains infinitesimal particles of gold and silver, ground so fine that they interact with light at the molecular level, a phenomenon we now call dichroism. What makes the Lycurgus cup so extraordinary isn't just its color-changing trick. It's the precision required to achieve it. The gold particles suspended in the glass measure about 50 nanometers across. That's 1,000 times smaller than a grain of pollen. To put that in perspective, Roman artisans were manipulating matter at a scale invisible to the naked eye, centuries before the invention of microscopes. How did they do it? One theory suggests they added powdered gold and silver to molten glass, then carefully reheated it to precipitate the nanoparticles, a process requiring exact temperatures and timing. Even a slight miscalculation would turn the glass murky or destroy the effect entirely. Yet somehow, they consistently produced this marvel, suggesting a level of technical sophistication we've only recently begun to appreciate. The cup's craftsmanship hints at a deeper cultural significance. The scene depicted King Lycurgus ensnared by vines as punishment for defying Dionysus may have been chosen specifically to exploit the color shift. Imagine a Roman noble drinking from it at a banquet. As wine filled the cup, the red glow would have made the trapped king appear submerged in blood, a dramatic reinforcement of the myth's moral. This wasn't just decoration, it was storytelling fused with cutting-edge science. Modern attempts to recreate the cup's properties reveal just how advanced Roman glassmaking was. In the 1990s, researchers using electron microscopes discovered that the nanoparticles weren't randomly scattered. They were evenly dispersed, indicating a controlled manufacturing process. Some speculate the Romans might have used plant extracts or urine to stabilize the metal particles, techniques that align with ancient recipes for medicinal gold suspensions. But even with this knowledge, contemporary glassmakers can't perfectly replicate the cup's vivid color play. The original artisans likely relied on generations of trial and error, honing their methods through observation rather than theory. The Lycurgus cup forces us to rethink the boundaries of ancient innovation. This wasn't accidental alchemy, it was deliberate engineering at the atomic level. In an era we often dismiss as primitive, artisans were achieving effects we'd need electron microscopes to even understand. That's the real wonder here, not just the object itself, but the glimpse it offers into a lost world of experimentation, where artistry and science were inseparable. Every flicker of color in its glass whispers the same tantalizing question. What other microscopic marvels did the ancients master, only for their secrets to fade like light through ancient glass? Standing in the heart of Delhi's Qutub complex, a 23-foot-tall iron pillar defies one of nature's most relentless forces, time. Weighing over 6 tons and dating back to the 4th century, this ancient column should be a crumbling relic, its surface eaten away by centuries of monsoons, scorching heat, and pollution. Yet against all odds, it remains almost entirely rust-free, its smooth surface still bearing inscriptions from 1600 years ago. Modern scientists have analyzed its metal, expecting to find some obvious secret, but the results only deepen the mystery. The pillar isn't just resistant to rust, it's practically immune, thanks to a unique blend of phosphorus, iron, and trace elements that form a protective barrier against corrosion. And here's the twist: despite knowing its composition, we still can't replicate its near-indestructible properties with today's technology. What makes the pillar so extraordinary isn't just its durability, it's the precision of its craftsmanship. The iron is remarkably pure, with a phosphorus content nearly 3 times higher than modern steel. This isn't a lucky accident, it's evidence of deliberate, sophisticated metallurgy. Ancient Indian smiths working with bloomery furnaces somehow perfected a process that created a thin, invisible layer of mesawite, a corrosion-resistant compound on the pillar's surface. This protective film regenerates over time, healing microscopic scratches and maintaining its shield against the elements. Even more astonishing, the pillar was forged in a single piece, a technical marvel considering the era's limitations. How did they achieve such uniformity without modern casting techniques? The answer might lie in the lost art of Wootz steelmaking, a method that produced high-carbon steel ingots through controlled cooling, but the pillar's exact recipe remains elusive. Theories about its rust-resistant properties range from the plausible to the poetic. Some researchers point to Delhi's dry climate, suggesting the pillar's initial exposure to heat and air helped form its protective layer. Others argue that the high phosphorus content, combined with trace amounts of sulfur and slag inclusions, created a self-healing effect. But here's the catch: when modern metallurgists tried to recreate the alloy using the same ratios, the results were weaker and more brittle. Clearly, the ancient smiths knew something we don't, perhaps a quenching technique or a specific fuel source that altered the iron's crystalline structure. Local legends even claim the pillar was coated in a mythical herbal paste, though no evidence supports this. The pillar's inscriptions add another layer of intrigue. They celebrate a king named Chandra, likely Chandragupta II of the Gupta Empire, and hint at its original location in Udayagiri, a site linked to advanced astronomical observations. Was the pillar part of a larger scientific or religious complex? Its rustlessness might have been symbolic, representing the eternal nature of divine power or cosmic order. Or perhaps it was simply the pinnacle of practical engineering, a testament to an era when artisans elevated their craft to near alchemical levels. Today, the pillar stands as both a triumph and a taunt. It survived invasions, wars, and the industrial age, outlasting countless modern structures that succumbed to rust within decades. Yet for all our scanning electron microscopes and spectrographic analyzers, its full secrets remain locked in the past. Maybe the answer isn't in the metal alone, but in the lost context of its creation, the rituals, the tools, the unrecorded innovations of a culture that saw no need to write down what every master smith simply knew. The Iron Pillar of Delhi doesn't just challenge our understanding of ancient technology, it humbles us with the reminder that some knowledge once lost might never be recovered. And that's the real lesson here. Progress isn't always a straight line forward. Sometimes it's a circle with the past gleaming at its center, untarnished and just out of reach. Carved into the walls of the Hathor Temple at Dendera, a series of enigmatic reliefs have sparked debates that blur the line between archaeology and science fiction. One particular carving stands out, a large, elongated object resembling a modern light bulb, complete with a filament-like snake curling inside what looks like a glass enclosure, supported by a pillar-like base. At first glance, it's hard not to see the resemblance. Could this be evidence that ancient Egyptians harnessed electricity thousands of years before Edison? The so-called Dendera light has become a magnet for alternative history enthusiasts, but mainstream scholars offer a very different interpretation. The key to understanding this carving lies in the context of Egyptian mythology. The scene is part of a larger tableau depicting the creation myth of the god Harsomtus, often represented as a serpent emerging from a lotus flower, a symbol of rebirth and cosmic energy. The bulb itself is likely a stylized depiction of a jed pillar, an emblem of stability, cradling a sun disk and a serpent representing divine power. The temple's inscriptions describe it as part of a ritual involving the cyclical renewal of life, not a technological device. Yet even with this explanation, the visual parallels remain uncanny. Why would ancient artisans carve something that, to modern eyes, looks so eerily like an electric light? One theory suggests the carving might represent a form of symbolic technology, not literal electricity, but a metaphorical illumination of spiritual knowledge. The Egyptians were masters of encoding complex ideas in visual shorthand. The serpent's undulating form could symbolize the flickering of a flame in a sacred lamp, while the enclosing bulb might represent the protective embrace of the heavens. But here's where it gets intriguing. Experiments with replicas of ancient Egyptian batteries, clay jars containing copper and iron, similar to the Baghdad battery, have shown they could generate small currents. Could the Dendera relief be a fusion of myth and observed natural phenomena, hinting at a rudimentary understanding of electrical principles? Skeptics point out the absence of supporting evidence: no wires, no switches, no surviving devices that could function as part of an electrical grid. The temple's ceilings are blackened by soot from torches and oil lamps, the very tools Egyptians actually used for light. But the allure of the Dendera light persists because it taps into a deeper question. How do we interpret ancient art when it seems to defy our assumptions? The carving's precision, the way the filament aligns with the bulb's curvature, the base's resemblance to an insulator, feels too deliberate to dismiss as pure coincidence. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. The Egyptians were keen observers of nature, and they documented phenomena like electric fish in the Nile. Could they have experimented with static electricity or conductive materials without developing a full-fledged technology? The Dendera light may not prove the existence of ancient light bulbs, but it challenges us to consider how advanced knowledge might have been expressed through the lens of myth. After all, if future archaeologists unearthed a stained glass window depicting divine rays as laser beams, would they assume we'd mastered light amplification or recognize it as artistic metaphor? The carving's real power isn't in answering questions, but in keeping them alive, reminding us that the past always holds more mysteries than we're prepared to solve. Discovered in 1898 during an excavation of a tomb near Saqqara, this small wooden artifact, barely 7 inches long, might seem like a child's toy at first glance. But look closer, and the Saqqara bird reveals contours that feel unnervingly modern. A sleek, tapered body, wings shaped not like a bird's but like an aircraft's airfoil, and even a subtle vertical tail fin resembling a rudder. When aerodynamic engineers tested replicas in wind tunnels, they made a startling discovery. The Saqqara bird isn't just shaped like a glider, it performs like one. With its wings angled to generate lift and its tail stabilizing flight, the design suggests an understanding of principles formalized thousands of years later by the Wright brothers. So how did an object crafted around 200 BC end up mirroring the physics of flight so precisely? The most straightforward explanation is that it's a stylized bird, perhaps a ceremonial offering or a child's plaything. After all, ancient Egyptians revered birds like the falcon, symbolizing the god Horus, and many similar wooden carvings depict avian forms. But here's where the plot thickens. Unlike other bird artifacts from the period, the Saqqara bird lacks legs, eyes, and feather markings. Its wings are rigid and flat-bottomed, ideal for gliding, not flapping. In 2006, a team of aerodynamics experts built a scaled-up replica with a modified tail stabilizer, and to their astonishment, it flew nearly perfectly, requiring only a slight adjustment to the tail's angle. This wasn't just a lucky shape, it was a functional design. Could this imply that ancient Egyptians observed or even experimented with flight? Some researchers point to the legend of Jetepher's flying machine, mentioned in fragmented texts as a gift from the sun god Ra. Others speculate the bird might have been a prototype for ceremonial kites, or even a symbolic representation of flight inspired by watching seeds or insects glide on the Nile's breezes. But there's a more provocative theory that the artifact is a remnant of a broader, lost tradition of early aerodynamics. Similar artifacts, like the pre-Columbian Quimbaya airplanes, suggest other cultures might have toyed with flight concepts long before recorded history. Skeptics counter that without additional evidence, no written records, no larger artifacts, no tools for crafting such devices, the Saqqara bird remains an isolated curiosity. Maybe it was a weather vane, its tail catching the wind to spin like a divine omen. Or perhaps it was a ritual object, its flight-like form meant to carry prayers to the heavens. The truth might never be fully known, but the artifact's very existence forces us to reconsider the boundaries of ancient innovation. After all, if a simple wooden carving can defy expectations so completely, what else might we be underestimating about the past? The Saqqara bird doesn't just sit in a museum case, it soars through history, leaving us to wonder how close humanity came to the skies centuries before we finally took flight. Tucked away in the British Museum's collection, an unassuming piece of rock crystal from ancient Assyria challenges everything we thought we knew about the timeline of optical science. Known as the Nimrud lens, this 3,000-year-old oval-shaped artifact about the size of a walnut has a surface so carefully ground and polished that it can focus sunlight into a bright pinpoint. Discovered in 1850 by archaeologist Austin Henry Layard amid the ruins of Nimrod's palace, it was initially dismissed as a decorative inlay or ritual object. But hold it at the right angle and something extraordinary happens. Distant objects sharpen into focus, text appears clearer, and tiny details magnify before your eyes. This isn't just a polished stone, it's a functioning optical lens, crafted centuries before the earliest known telescopes or microscopes. What makes the Nimrud lens so baffling isn't just its existence, it's the precision behind its creation. The lens is made of natural rock crystal, a material notoriously difficult to shape without modern tools. Yet its curvature is nearly flawless, with a focal length of about 4.5 inches, perfect for magnifying small objects or starting fires. How did Assyrian artisans achieve such accuracy without precision grinders or measuring devices? Some researchers suggest they used a painstaking process of rubbing the crystal against abrasive sands, guided by trial and error until the desired curve emerged. Others propose it might have been shaped using a lathe-like device. Though no evidence of such advanced machinery survives from the era, theories about its purpose are just as intriguing. Some argue it was a magnifying glass for intricate seal carvings or jewelry work, a practical tool for artisans. Cuneiform tablets from the same period describe detailed glassmaking techniques, hinting at a culture capable of sophisticated material manipulation. But there's a more provocative possibility that the lens was part of a larger optical device, perhaps an early telescope. Assyrian astronomers meticulously tracked celestial events, and the lens could have helped spot distant stars or planetary movements. If true, this would rewrite the history of astronomy, suggesting telescopic observation began millennia before Galileo. Skeptics counter that the lens's imperfections, slight asymmetries and surface scratches make it unsuitable for precise astronomy. They point to similar crystals found in other ancient sites, often interpreted as decorative or symbolic objects. Yet even if the Nimrud lens was never part of a telescope, its very existence implies a deeper understanding of light and refraction than previously credited to ancient cultures. The Assyrians weren't just skilled craftsmen, they were keen observers of natural phenomena, experimenting with materials in ways that bordered on proto-scientific. Modern attempts to replicate the lens using period-appropriate tools reveal just how challenging its creation would have been. Artisans working with replica copper and sand abrasives took weeks to achieve even a crude approximation, let alone the Nimrud lens's refined curvature. This raises a haunting question. Was this lens a lone experiment or the sole survivor of a broader tradition of optical innovation? The absence of similar artifacts might simply reflect the fragility of ancient technology. Most tools from this era were made of perishable materials like wood or leather, leaving no trace. The Nimrud lens doesn't just magnify objects, it magnifies our curiosity about the past. In a world where we assume scientific progress follows a straight line, this tiny crystal shatters the illusion. It whispers of a parallel path where ancient minds grasped concepts we thought belonged to later eras. Whether used for crafting, astronomy, or sheer wonder, the lens stands as a testament to humanity's timeless drive to see beyond the limits of the naked eye, and a reminder that some breakthroughs might not be discoveries but rediscoveries. In 1961, a seemingly ordinary rock split open in California's Coso Mountains revealed something extraordinary: a porcelain cylinder with a metal core, encased in what geologists claimed was a 500,000-year-old nodule. At first glance, it looked uncannily like a 20th-century spark plug, complete with threaded metal casing and a ceramic insulator. The discovery sent shockwaves through fringe archaeology circles, with some proclaiming it as proof of advanced ancient technology or even extraterrestrial intervention. But here's where the story takes a twist. Closer examination suggests a far more mundane explanation. The Coso artifact is almost certainly a champion spark plug from the 1920s, likely embedded in a concretion, a hard mineral layer that forms rapidly around objects in certain environments. Yet despite the probable debunking, this little object continues to captivate imaginations, raising a deeper question. Why are we so drawn to these so-called out-of-place artifacts? The allure lies in their power to disrupt linear narratives of progress. Objects like the Coso artifact, whether genuine anomalies or misidentified modern items, tap into our fascination with the idea that ancient civilizations might have glimpsed technologies we consider modern. Similar cases abound: the Ayod wedge, a chunk of aluminum found in 2-million-year-old strata, or the London hammer, a 19th-century tool head encased in supposedly ancient stone. Most have plausible explanations, geological oddities, hoaxes, or simply misstated context, but their very existence sparks lively debates about how history gets written and who gets to decide what's possible. What makes the Coso case particularly intriguing is how it reflects the tension between skepticism and wonder. The spark plug's design matches early 20th century models, and mineral concretions can form in decades under the right conditions. Yet proponents of its anomalous nature point to the original geologist's insistence that the encasing rock showed ancient weathering patterns. This disconnect highlights a recurring theme in archaeology: context is everything. Without precise documentation of where and how an object was found, even the most bizarre artifact loses its evidential weight. Beyond the specifics of the Coso artifact lies a broader cultural phenomenon. Humanity has always crafted myths of lost golden ages and forgotten technologies, from Atlantis to the Vimanas of ancient India. These stories fulfill a deep-seated need to believe that brilliance isn't confined to the present, that our ancestors might have possessed knowledge we've yet to rediscover. In an age of rapid technological advancement, the idea that we're retracing steps rather than blazing new trails holds a peculiar comfort. Ultimately, the real value of these mysteries isn't in proving alternate histories, but in reminding us how much we still don't know. For every debunked out-of-place artifact, there's a genuine archaeological enigma, like the Antikythera Mechanism or Damascus stele, that defies easy explanation. The Coso spark plug may not rewrite history, but it serves as a spark of its own, igniting curiosity about the boundaries of human ingenuity and the stories we tell to make sense of the past. And sometimes that's enough to keep the conversation and the wonder alive. Deep in the jungles of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, hundreds of stone spheres lie half-buried in the earth, some as small as oranges, others towering taller than a person and weighing up to 16 tons. Carved with near-perfect symmetry, these mysterious orbs have baffled archaeologists since their discovery in the 1930s, when workers clearing banana plantations stumbled upon them. At first glance, they might seem like natural formations, but closer inspection reveals the truth. These are man-made marvels, shaped with such precision that modern engineers struggle to explain how ancient artisans achieved such flawless geometry without metal tools or measuring devices. The stones, crafted from gabbro, a hard volcanic rock, vary in size but share an uncanny uniformity in their spherical perfection. Measurements show deviations of less than 2 centimeters in diameter, even in the largest specimens. How did pre-Columbian cultures, likely the Diquis people between 800 and 1500 CE, accomplish this? The prevailing theory involves a combination of meticulous pecking and grinding. Artisans may have heated the rock surface with fire, then chipped away at it with harder stones, slowly shaping the sphere before polishing it with sand or leather. But here's the catch: experiments using these methods require months of labor for even small spheres, let alone the massive ones. The largest would have taken generations to complete, demanding not just skill but an unbroken tradition of craftsmanship passed down through centuries. Then there's the puzzle of transportation. Many spheres were found miles from their quarries, often in clusters or aligned in patterns. Without wheels or draft animals, how did they move these multi-ton stones through dense rainforest and uneven terrain? Some researchers propose log rollers or rope systems, while indigenous oral traditions speak of magical aids, gods or giants who placed the spheres. Modern attempts to replicate the feat using only prehistoric technology have been exhausting and only partially successful, suggesting the Diquis possessed sophisticated knowledge of leverage and balance now lost to time. But the greatest mystery isn't how they were made, but why. The spheres are often found near burial sites or ceremonial centers, hinting at astronomical or religious significance. Some align with solstice sunrises, while others mirror constellations. A few were arranged in geometric patterns, their positions possibly mapping celestial events or territorial boundaries. Yet no written records or oral histories clearly explain their purpose, leaving archaeologists to piece together clues from their context. Were they symbols of power, markers of sacred spaces, or even representations of celestial bodies in a long-forgotten cosmology? The stone's fate adds another layer of intrigue. Many were looted or destroyed in the 20th century, with some dynamited by treasure hunters convinced they held gold. Others were rolled into rivers or repurposed as lawn ornaments, erasing vital archaeological context. Today, only a handful remain in their original placements, making it even harder to decode their secrets. What makes the stone spheres so captivating isn't just their perfection, but what they represent: a civilization capable of extraordinary precision and patience, thriving in a landscape where modern tools would falter. They challenge our assumptions about primitive societies, proving that ingenuity doesn't require advanced technology, just unwavering dedication and a mastery of the natural world. Every sphere is a silent testament to a culture that saw the universe not as chaotic, but as something worth carving into perfect, eternal form. And perhaps that's the real lesson here. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only admired. Deep in the mountains of China's Baigong region, a discovery in 1938 sparked one of archaeology's most enduring controversies. According to reports, a team led by Professor Kai Pute stumbled upon a series of caves containing skeletal remains of small, large-headed beings, and beside them, hundreds of stone discs, each roughly a foot in diameter, with a hole in the center and spiral grooves radiating outward. These were the Dropa Stones, artifacts that would ignite decades of debate. The discs, allegedly 12,000 years old, bore tiny hieroglyphs so precise they could only be read under magnification, telling a story so extraordinary it defied belief, an account of alien spacecraft crashing into the mountains, their stranded occupants, the Dropa people, struggling to survive. But here's where the story fractures. No reputable institution has ever examined the stones firsthand. The original expedition's records vanished amidst the chaos of World War II, and the only accounts come from second-hand sources and sensationalized articles. The few blurry photographs in circulation show discs resembling Bai, a type of ceremonial jade artifact common in ancient China, though proponents argue the hieroglyphs, if they exist at all, bear no resemblance to any known writing system. When researchers like Russian scientist W. Saitsu claimed in the 1960s that the stones contained high cobalt and other unusual metal alloys, it only fueled speculation. Yet without physical evidence, the scientific community remains skeptical, dismissing the Dropa Stones as a hoax or a case of mistaken identity. The controversy deepens when you consider the cultural context. Tibet and Western China have long traditions of stone discs used in rituals or as grave markers. Could the Dropa Stones be a misinterpreted cache of such objects, their grooves weathered by time into patterns that resemble writing? Some scholars suggest the entire narrative was fabricated during the Cold War, a blend of UFO mythology and Orientalist exoticism designed to captivate Western audiences. Others point to the lack of follow-up expeditions despite China's rigorous archaeological programs, as evidence the story lacks credibility. Yet the legend persists, kept alive by a tantalizing question. What if even a fraction of the claims were true? the idea of ancient alien contact isn't new, but the Dropa Stones crystallize a broader human longing to believe we're not alone and that our ancestors might have encountered forces beyond our understanding. Whether elaborate hoax or misunderstood relic, the discs serve as a mirror, reflecting our fascination with the unknown and our eagerness to rewrite history's boundaries. In the end, their greatest power isn't in what they might reveal about the past, but in what they reveal about us, our hunger for mysteries that defy explanation, and our timeless hope that the universe holds secrets far stranger than we've dared to imagine. In 1513, Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis compiled one of the most perplexing artifacts in the history of exploration, a world map so accurate in some respects that it seems to defy the timeline of human discovery. The map, drawn on gazelle skin and incorporating details from 20 different source charts, includes coastlines of Europe, Africa, and South America with remarkable precision. But what stops historians cold is its depiction of a landmass at the bottom of the world, one bearing an uncanny resemblance to Antarctica's ice-free coastline, nearly 300 years before the continent was officially discovered in 1820. Even more baffling, the map shows topographic features now buried under miles of glacial ice, features we've only been able to confirm with modern seismic surveys. How could a 16th-century navigator have known about a land hidden beneath centuries of snow, let alone chart its contours with such startling accuracy? The map's creator left clues, but they only deepen the mystery. In his own notes, Piri Reis credits earlier source maps, some dating back to the 4th century BC, including those used by Christopher Columbus. He mentions consulting the maps of the infidels, possibly referencing ancient Greek, Phoenician, or even pre-Columbian seafarers. This raises a tantalizing possibility. Could the Piri Reis map be a mosaic of lost knowledge, piecing together fragments of charts from civilizations that explored much farther than we've ever imagined? Some researchers point to the advanced maritime capabilities of cultures like the Minoans or the Polynesians, who crossed vast oceans with rudimentary tools. Others speculate about hypothetical Bronze Age explorers who might have circumnavigated the globe, leaving behind cartographic traces that later fell into Ottoman hands. Skeptics offer more grounded explanations. The southern landmass might represent a distorted version of South America's eastern coast, a common error in early maps where unexplored regions were often filled with speculative geography. The map's southern continent lacks the distinctive Palmer Peninsula, and some argue its shape aligns more with artistic license than actual surveying. But here's where the plot thickens. In 1956, when the map was compared to seismic surveys of Antarctica's subglacial topography, certain features, like the Queen Maud Land coast, matched with eerie precision. These details wouldn't be visible without ice-penetrating radar, suggesting the map's sources somehow depicted Antarctica as it looked 6,000 years ago before the last major glaciation. Modern technology has only amplified the debate. When overlaid with satellite images using advanced projection techniques, the map's coastlines align with stunning accuracy in some areas, while others veer into obvious inaccuracies. This patchwork of precision and error suggests Piri Reis might have blended genuine, ancient charts with the flawed geographical assumptions of his era. The real enigma isn't just the map itself, but the idea that it could be a palimpsest, a layering of knowledge spanning millennia, where each generation copied and corrupted earlier truths until only fragments remained. What makes the Piri Reis map so compelling isn't just the question of Antarctica. It's the implication that histories, discoveries, might often be rediscoveries, and that humanity's grasp of the world has expanded and contracted like tides over the centuries. Every line on that fragile parchment whispers the same haunting possibility, that our understanding of the past is not just incomplete, but punctuated by blank spaces where entire chapters of exploration once existed. Whether a miraculous preservation of lost knowledge or a coincidental collage of educated guesses, the map remains a challenge, not just to cartographers, but to anyone who thinks the past has no more surprises left to reveal. Among the glittering treasures of pre-Columbian Colombia, the Quimbaya artifacts stand out not just for their exquisite craftsmanship, but for the storm of controversy they've ignited. These tiny gold figurines, crafted by the Quimbaya civilization between 1000 and 1500 CE, depict creatures with sleek, streamlined bodies, delta-shaped wings, and vertical tail fins, features so strikingly reminiscent of modern aircraft that they've fueled decades of speculation. Were these simply stylized birds and insects, as mainstream archaeologists insist, or could they be evidence of ancient aviation technology far ahead of its time? The debate centers on a handful of particularly aerodynamic designs, often called the Quimbaya airplanes. When scaled up and tested in wind tunnels by engineers in the 1990s, some models demonstrated remarkable flight stability, their wings generating lift, their tails acting as stabilizers. One German aerodynamics team even fitted a replica with a motor and propeller, reporting that it flew flawlessly. Of course, correlation doesn't equal causation. A shape that flies well doesn't automatically mean its creators understood aerodynamics. But the precision is undeniably eerie. The figurines' wings are angled for optimal airfoil lift, their fuselages tapered to reduce drag, details that go far beyond the needs of artistic symbolism. Archaeologists counter that the artifacts align with known Quimbaya artistic conventions. Many depict animals like stingrays, whose flat, winged bodies naturally resemble aircraft, or exaggerated insects with split tails. The civilization's goldsmiths were masters of abstraction, often blending features from multiple creatures into hybrid designs. A figurine might combine the wings of a bat with the tail of a fish, creating forms that seem futuristic to modern eyes but made perfect sense within their cultural context. Additionally, no other evidence suggests the Quimbaya had any mechanical flight technology. No tools, no workshop remains, no oral traditions referencing flying machines. Yet the artifacts raise a provocative question. Where does artistic inspiration end and observational science begin? Ancient cultures often encoded natural phenomena into their art. Could the Quimbaya have been depicting not literal aircraft, but observations of gliding seeds or aerodynamically gifted animals like the flying fish? Some indigenous South American tribes still use seeds as models for toy gliders, proving that basic aerodynamic principles can be grasped through simple observation. The figurines might represent a similar intuitive understanding, refined through generations of craftsmanship. What makes the Quimbaya artifacts so compelling isn't just their shape, it's their cultural weight. Gold held profound spiritual significance for pre-Columbian societies, often symbolizing the sun's transformative power. If these were ritual objects, their aerodynamic forms might have represented shamanic flight or celestial travel, bridging earthly and divine realms. Modern viewers steeped in aviation imagery see jet planes where ancient artists saw metaphors. The truth likely lies somewhere between myth and material fact. The Quimbaya were undoubtedly brilliant observers of nature, capable of abstracting forms with a precision that still resonates today. Whether their airplanes were sacred symbols, artistic flukes, or something more remains one of history's most tantalizing maybes. And that's the real beauty of these golden enigmas. They challenge us to wonder not just about the past, but about the boundaries of human creativity itself. After all, isn't the line between a bird and a blueprint thinner than we think? Buried beneath the sands of modern-day Pakistan lies a city that shouldn't exist, at least, not with the level of sophistication it displays. Mohenjo-Daro, the jewel of the Indus Valley civilization, thrived over 4,000 years ago with amenities that wouldn't become standard elsewhere for millennia. Grid-patterned streets, advanced drainage systems, even uniform brick sizes suggesting centralized urban planning. But among the ruins, archaeologists have uncovered artifacts so puzzling they've sparked debates that blur the line between ancient ritual and proto-technology. Take the so-called Mohenjo-Daro batteries, terracotta pots containing copper cylinders and iron rods, eerily reminiscent of the Baghdad battery design. When filled with an acidic or alkaline substance like lemon juice, these vessels could generate a small electric current. Were they used for electroplating jewelry, as some suggest? Or were they sacred objects, their subtle charge meant to simulate divine energy in religious ceremonies? The ambiguity of these artifacts speaks to a broader mystery. The Indus Valley people left behind no deciphered written records, only cryptic seals and symbols, forcing us to interpret their technology through educated guesses. Their cities boasted elaborate water management systems, including the world's earliest known public baths and covered sewers, yet we've found no evidence of monumental temples or palaces. This was a civilization that prioritized practicality and equality, with standardized weights and measures hinting at a highly organized trade network. But what truly sets them apart is their apparent avoidance of warfare. Unlike contemporaneous Mesopotamia or Egypt, Mohenjo-Daro's ruins show no fortifications, no grand statues of conquerors, no cache of weapons. Instead, we find mass-produced toys, intricate beadwork, and evidence of dentistry, a society that valued commerce, craft, and communal living over conquest. Then there are the puzzling unicorn seals, thousands of carved stone tablets depicting a mythical creature scholars still can't identify. Some argue it represents a now extinct animal, while others see it as a cultural symbol or even an early corporate logo for merchant guilds. The sheer quantity of these seals suggests they played a crucial role in daily life, possibly as amulets, trade markers, or administrative stamps. But without a Rosetta Stone equivalent to decode their script, their true purpose remains locked in the past. Perhaps the most tantalizing clues lie in what we haven't found. Mohenjo-Daro's artisans mastered metallurgy, producing bronze tools with a precision rivaling later cultures, yet we've uncovered no large-scale smelting facilities. Their jewelers drilled perfect micro-holes in carnelian beads using techniques we've only recently replicated with diamond-tipped tools, but the workshops where these skills were honed have vanished. This disparity hints at a possible deliberate dispersal of industry, a decentralization that prevented pollution and resource depletion, showcasing an ecological foresight startlingly modern in its sensibility. What haunts researchers isn't just the sophistication of Mohenjo-Daro's achievements, but the quietude of its decline. Unlike civilizations felled by invasion or natural disaster, the city shows signs of a gradual abandonment. Wells were carefully filled in, artifacts neatly stored. It's as if the inhabitants simply walked away, leaving behind a frozen moment of urban perfection. The artifacts they left, whether batteries, seals, or beads, aren't just relics, they're fragments of a lost philosophy, one that balanced technology with sustainability, innovation with egalitarianism. In a world where ancient history is often written by the conquerors, Mohenjo-Daro whispers an alternative narrative. That greatness doesn't require pyramids or empires, just the collective genius of a society that saw further than its time. And that, perhaps, is the most advanced technology of all. High in the remote mountains of China's Qinghai province, a series of caves holds one of archaeology's most perplexing enigmas, the Baigong pipes. These strange metallic tubes, some as wide as a tree trunk and others no thicker than a toothpick, protrude from the rock walls in perfectly straight lines or curve in unnatural geometric patterns. What makes them truly baffling is their composition, an alloy of iron, silicon dioxide, and calcium oxide materials that don't occur together naturally in these formations. Local legends speak of an ancient pyramid-like structure nearby, now eroded to rubble, where similar pipes were found leading underground. Could these be remnants of some long-lost advanced civilization, or are they simply a geological oddity that's fooled us into seeing human handiwork where none exists? The pipes first gained international attention in 2002 when reports described their uncanny regularity. Some run horizontally into the mountain like deliberate conduits, while others stand vertically like fossilized pillars. Most striking are the ones that dive straight into a nearby saltwater lake, their ends corroded but their structures still intact after untold centuries. When samples were analyzed, researchers found something even more puzzling. The pipes contained organic plant matter, but it had been completely carbonized, as if subjected to extreme heat. This detail fuels theories about industrial use, perhaps as part of some ancient energy or irrigation system. But here's what defies explanation. Radiocarbon dating suggests some pipes could be over 150,000 years old, a time when Homo sapiens were just beginning to migrate out of Africa. Geologists offer a more down-to-earth explanation literally. They propose the pipes could be fulgurites, hollow tubes formed when lightning strikes sand or rock, fusing the material into glassy channels. Others suggest they're the result of dendritic mineralization, where water seeping through rock deposits minerals in branching, pipe-like patterns over millennia. The problem: most natural formations of this kind are small, fragile, and irregular, nothing like the Baigong pipe's robust, straight-line configurations. Plus, the precise alloy composition remains difficult to explain through natural processes alone. Then there's the cultural context. The area has been inhabited by nomadic peoples for centuries, yet no local traditions mention the pipe's creation. No mining operations or smelting sites from any known ancient Chinese dynasty have been discovered nearby. If these were man-made, who built them, and why in such an inaccessible location? Some researchers point to the pipe's alignment with certain stars, suggesting an astronomical purpose, while fringe theorists speculate about prehistoric visitors or even extraterrestrial involvement. What makes the Baigong pipes so endlessly fascinating isn't just their mysterious origin, it's what they represent about our relationship with the past. Faced with something that defies easy categorization, we're forced to confront how little we truly know about ancient human capabilities. Every strange artifact, from the Antikythera Mechanism to these rusted tubes in a Chinese mountain, chips away at our assumptions of linear progress. Perhaps the most profound truth they reveal is that history isn't a straight line from primitive to advanced, but a vast, tangled web of innovation, loss, and rediscovery. Until we find more clues, the Baigong pipes will remain what they've always been: silent sentinels guarding secrets we've yet to unravel. On a remote island in the vast Pacific, where towering stone moai statues have long captured the world's imagination, an even more enduring mystery lies tucked away in museum vaults: the Rongorongo glyphs. These intricate symbols, carved into weathered wooden tablets by the hands of Easter Island's vanished scribes, represent the only known indigenous writing system to emerge in Polynesia. Unlike the petroglyphs found across the Pacific, Rongorongo isn't mere pictorial art. Its glyphs, human figures, plants, animals, and geometric shapes arranged in precise, alternating lines, follow a deliberate sequence that suggests true literacy. Yet, despite over a century of study, no one has convincingly cracked its code. What secrets do these fragile tablets hold, and why does this script stand alone in a region where oral tradition dominated? The enigma begins with the tablets themselves. Most were carved on driftwood, likely from South American shores, using obsidian blades or shark teeth. The glyphs weren't merely scratched into the surface, they were masterfully incised with a technique called reverse boustrophedon, where each line flips direction and the characters invert to be read in alternating orientations. This level of sophistication hints at a formalized writing system, not casual symbolism. But here's what truly baffles linguists. Rongorongo shares no clear connection with any other script worldwide. Its closest visual parallels are the ancient Indus Valley symbols or the proto-writing of the Vinca culture in Europe, civilizations separated by oceans and millennia. How did a small, isolated island community develop such complexity independently? Oral traditions offer tantalizing clues. Elders spoke of 67 original tablets, most destroyed when 19th-century missionaries, branding them pagan artifacts, burned all but 24 they sent to European collectors. The few surviving elders who could recite the texts were silenced by disease and slave raids, severing the chain of knowledge. What remains are fragments of a lost intellectual tradition, possibly genealogies, astronomical records, or creation myths. Some glyphs resemble plants and animals extinct on Easter Island for centuries, suggesting the tablets preserved ecological memory. Others appear to chart lunar cycles, hinting at a calendrical function crucial for agriculture and navigation. Modern decipherment efforts have run into frustrating dead ends. Early researchers assumed Rongorongo was logographic like Chinese, but statistical analysis reveals patterns more akin to syllabic or alphabetic systems. In the 1990s, a team claimed to link certain glyph sequences to Polynesian kinship terms, but their findings couldn't be broadly applied. More recently, computational linguists have identified repeating phrases that might encode grammatical structures, yet the underlying language, whether an archaic form of Rapa Nui or a now-lost ceremonial tongue, remains uncertain. The script's isolation raises profound questions about cultural exchange. Easter Island's famous moai demonstrate clear connections to broader Polynesian traditions, but Rongorongo has no cousins. Was it inspired by a lone, shipwrecked foreigner carrying writing concepts? Or does it represent the rare, spontaneous birth of literacy, a cognitive leap akin to the invention of cuneiform or Egyptian hieroglyphs? The tablet's wooden medium speaks volumes. In a society that felled its last trees centuries before European contact, these weren't casual doodles but precious vessels of meaning carved at great cost. Perhaps the most haunting possibility is that Rongorongo wasn't just a writing system, but a response to crisis. Some tablets date to the 18th century, when deforestation and societal collapse gripped the island. In this light, the glyphs might represent a desperate attempt to preserve vanishing knowledge, a library in wood crafted as the world they described crumbled. Today, as modern Rapa Nui communities revive their language and traditions, the unreadable tablets stand as both a monument and a challenge, proof that human brilliance can flourish in isolation, and a reminder that some voices from the past may never fully speak again. Buried in the silt of a Texas creek bed in 1936, a peculiar discovery sent shockwaves through the archaeological world: a hammer, its wooden handle partially fossilized, its metal head encased in solid limestone dating back over 100 million years. Known as the London Hammer, this artifact looks like something straight out of a 19th century toolbox, yet its geological context suggests it's older than the dinosaurs. How could a clearly man-made object exist in rock formations that predate humanity by eons? This paradox has made it a poster child for so-called out-of-place artifacts, objects that seem to defy conventional timelines and challenge our understanding of history's linear progression. At first glance, the hammer's design is unmistakably modern. The 6-inch iron head bears the tapered edges and rounded peen of a tool from the 1800s, while the handle, now hardened into carbonized wood, shows clear signs of human craftsmanship. But here's where the mystery deepens. The rock encasing it isn't just old, it's Cretaceous, a layer of earth formed when Tyrannosaurus rex still roamed. Geologists who have examined the concretion note its dense, mineral-rich composition, typical of ancient sediments that slowly harden around objects over millennia. If the hammer truly belonged to this era, it would rewrite everything we know about human evolution. Mainstream science offers a more grounded explanation. The hammer likely fell into a mineral-rich creek bed in the 19th century, where rapid mineralization, a process where dissolved minerals cement around an object, fossilized it within decades rather than millennia. Similar cases exist, like the iron pot found in Oklahoma coal seams, later proven to be a modern item embedded through natural chemical processes. The hammer's iron composition, when analyzed, shows purity and forging techniques consistent with 19th century metallurgy, not prehistoric craftsmanship. Yet, even with these findings, the artifact continues to captivate because it taps into a deeper question. How do we distinguish between genuine anomalies and clever tricks of geology? What makes the London hammer so compelling isn't just its age discrepancy. It's the way it exposes the gaps in our historical record. For every artifact like this with a plausible explanation, there are others, like the Aeod wedge or the Antikythera Mechanism, that resist easy categorization. These objects force us to confront the limitations of our knowledge. History isn't a tidy shelf where every artifact slots neatly into place. It's a sprawling, tangled web where some threads lead to dead ends or loop back in ways we don't expect. The hammer's enduring allure lies in its ability to make us wonder. If our dating methods can be fooled by natural processes, what else might we be misinterpreting? Beyond the debate over its origins, the London hammer serves as a mirror for our own biases. Believers in lost civilizations or ancient advanced technologies see it as proof of their theories, while skeptics view it as a cautionary tale about confirmation bias. Both sides reveal something telling about how we engage with the past, whether we approach it with rigid skepticism, uncritical acceptance, or a willingness to sit with uncertainty. The hammer doesn't just challenge timelines, it challenges us to examine how we construct narratives about human achievement and what we're willing to accept as possible. In the end, the artifact's greatest value may not be in rewriting history, but in reminding us that the past is far messier and far more intriguing than textbooks often suggest. Whether a geological fluke or a glimpse of something we've yet to understand, the London hammer lingers in our collective imagination because it embodies the thrill of the unsolved. And sometimes that's enough to keep us digging. In the muddy banks of Romania's Mureș River, a discovery in 1973 would ignite one of archaeology's most heated debates. Buried under 35 feet of ancient sediment, workers uncovered a wedge-shaped metal object unlike anything else in the surrounding strata, an artifact now known as the Aeod object. At first glance, it resembled a crude tool or perhaps a piece of heavy machinery, but the real shock came when analysis revealed its composition, an alloy of aluminum coated in a thick layer of oxide. Here's why that's impossible. Aluminum in its pure metallic form wasn't isolated until 1825, and industrial production didn't begin until the late 19th century. Yet this object was encased in geological layers dating back 2 million years, a time when early humans hadn't even mastered fire, let alone metallurgy. Initial examinations only deepened the puzzle. The artifact weighed 5 pounds, with one end showing signs of blunt impact while the other tapered to a precise edge. Its surface bore parallel grooves, suggesting wear from mechanical use. When researchers at a lab in Lausanne, Switzerland analyzed samples, they identified 12 distinct metals in the alloy, including aluminum, copper, zinc, and traces of rare elements like cadmium and nickel. This wasn't a simple lump of ore, it was a sophisticated blend, its proportions mirroring alloys used in modern aerospace engineering. How could such a material exist in Pleistocene-era sediments, long before the advent of smelting? Mainstream science has largely dismissed the Aeod object as a misplaced modern item, perhaps a piece of mining equipment or a World War II vehicle part that somehow became embedded in older rock. Critics point to Romania's history of bauxite mining aluminum's primary ore and the region's turbulent 20th century conflicts as plausible sources. But here's where the counterarguments gain traction. The oxide layer coating the artifact measures over a millimeter thick, a depth that would require tens of thousands of years to form under natural conditions. Even more baffling, the geological stratum where it was found hadn't been disturbed since the Ice Age, ruling out recent intrusion. Alternative theories range from the speculative to the sensational. Some researchers propose the object could be a fragment of an ancient but advanced tool, left behind by a lost civilization with metallurgical knowledge far beyond what historians acknowledge. Others, veering into fringe territory, suggest extraterrestrial origins, citing the alloy's similarity to materials used in spacecraft. But the most compelling middle ground hypothesis involves natural processes we don't fully understand. Could extreme geological pressures and chemical reactions have created an aluminum-rich concretion that merely resembles a manufactured object? Unlikely, given the artifact's symmetrical grooves and impact marks, features rarely seen in natural formations. What makes the Aeod artifact so endlessly fascinating isn't just its paradoxical age or composition, it's what it represents about the gaps in our understanding. For every impossible artifact dismissed as a hoax or anomaly, there are unanswered questions that linger. How often do we misinterpret ancient technology because it doesn't fit our linear narrative of progress? The object's very existence forces us to confront uncomfortable possibilities, that human ingenuity might have flickered brightly in forgotten eras, only to be extinguished and rediscovered centuries later. Until new evidence emerges, the Aeod wedge remains a silent enigma, a metallic whisper from the depths of time, daring us to reconsider what we think we know about the timeline of innovation. In the dusty foothills of Peru's Ica region, a collection of stones has sparked a firestorm of controversy that blurs the line between archaeology and science fiction. Known as the Ica stones, these andesite rocks are etched with scenes that seem to defy history itself: humans battling dinosaurs, surgeons performing advanced medical procedures, even telescopes trained on celestial bodies. At first glance, they appear to be smoking gun evidence of a lost civilization with knowledge spanning millions of years. But the truth behind these enigmatic carvings is far more complex, weaving together human ingenuity, the allure of the unexplained, and the dark side of artifact trafficking. The stones first gained notoriety in the 1960s when a local farmer named Basilio Ashuya claimed to have discovered them in ancient burial caves. The imagery was astonishing, depictions of stegosaurs and triceratops rendered with anatomical accuracy, alongside humans wielding tools that resembled modern surgical instruments. Some showed what looked like blood transfusions or cesarean sections, while others illustrated constellations with precise astronomical alignments. If authentic, these carvings would rewrite everything we know about human history, suggesting either that dinosaurs coexisted with humans or that an advanced culture possessed paleontological knowledge centuries before the first dinosaur fossils were scientifically classified. But here's where the story unravels. Under scrutiny, Ashuya admitted to carving many of the stones himself, using dental tools and aging them with cow dung to create a patina. He claimed inspiration from comic books and textbooks, blending pop culture with local folklore to cater to tourists eager for sensational artifacts. Yet even after this confession, true believers persisted, arguing that not all stones could be fakes, especially those reportedly found in undisturbed geological layers. Subsequent investigations revealed a thriving black market in Ica, where artisans mass-produced ancient stones to meet demand from collectors and conspiracy theorists. What's truly fascinating isn't the stones' authenticity, but why they continue to captivate us. They tap into a deep-seated human desire to believe there's more to history than we've been taught, that hidden chapters of advanced knowledge or forgotten encounters with prehistoric creatures might still come to light. This isn't new. From the mythical Atlantis to the biblical Nephilim, cultures have always crafted narratives to explain gaps in the historical record. The Ica stones thrive in that fertile space between fact and fantasy, where the line between hoax and hope blurs. Scientists point to the stones as cautionary tales about confirmation bias. The human brain is wired to seek patterns, even when none exist, a trait that leads some to see dinosaurs in crude carvings that might simply represent stylized lizards or mythological beasts. Cultural context matters too. Andean art is rich with symbolic creatures, from the serpentine Amaru to the monstrous Yakumama, which could easily be misinterpreted as dinosaurs by outsiders. Yet the stones persist as cultural touchstones, featured in documentaries and books arguing for alternative histories, because they embody a tantalizing question: what if our understanding of the past is fundamentally incomplete? Perhaps the real lesson of the Ica stones lies in their enduring power as storytelling objects. Whether ancient or modern, they reflect humanity's endless curiosity about our origins. In an age where technology allows us to peer into the DNA of long-extinct species or map submerged cities, the idea that history might still hold earth-shattering secrets remains irresistible. The stones remind us that every era gets the mysteries it craves, and sometimes the most compelling artifacts aren't windows into the past, but mirrors reflecting our own hunger for wonder. Deep in the soil of a Native American shell hidden at the Goddard site in Maine, archaeologists uncovered something that shouldn't have been there: a small silver coin weathered by centuries but unmistakably Norse. Known as the Maine penny, this artifact dates to the reign of King Olaf Kyrre of Norway between 1067 and 1093, placing it squarely in the Viking Age. But here's what defies conventional history. It was found amidst the remains of a 12th century Penobscot settlement, thousands of miles from any known Norse settlement in North America. This tiny piece of currency, no larger than a thumbnail, has ignited one of archaeology's most tantalizing debates. Could this be physical proof of trade between Vikings and indigenous peoples centuries before Columbus? The coin's discovery in 1957 initially sparked skepticism. Could it have been planted or accidentally dropped by a modern collector? Radiocarbon dating of surrounding materials confirmed the archaeological layer was undisturbed, ruling out recent contamination. Chemical analysis matched its composition to other Norse coins minted in Trondheim, eliminating doubts about authenticity. But if real, how did it travel from a Scandinavian mint to the coast of Maine? The most plausible explanation involves a long-forgotten trade network stretching from Norse settlements in Newfoundland down the eastern seaboard. While Elands Ox Meadows proves Vikings briefly settled in Canada around the year 1000, no evidence suggests they ventured as far south as modern-day Maine. Yet the coin hints at indirect contact, perhaps through a chain of indigenous trade routes passing hand to hand over generations until it reached the Wabanaki people. This theory gains traction when examining other anomalous finds. A Norse-style spindle whorl was discovered on Baffin Island, while indigenous artifacts like Dorset culture carvings appear to depict European faces. Even the sagas contain cryptic references to Skraelings trading furs and pelts with Norse explorers. Could the Maine penny be a solitary survivor of a broader exchange system, most of which has vanished into time? The absence of other Norse artifacts at the Goddard site suggests this wasn't direct trade, but rather the farthest ripple of a cultural wave that began in Vinland. Objects like this rarely preserve in acidic soils, making the coin's survival a minor miracle and a rare window into interactions history barely recorded. Critics argue the coin could have arrived through natural means, perhaps carried across the Atlantic by early European fishermen centuries later and traded inland. But the timing aligns suspiciously well with the Norse occupation of Elands Ox Meadows, just a few decades after the coin's minting. More compelling is the context of its discovery, found alongside thousands of native artifacts in a traditional trading hub, suggesting it was valued not as exotic currency but as raw material. The Penobscot likely prized it for its silver content, possibly reshaping it into jewelry or ceremonial objects, explaining why no other coins have surfaced. What makes the Maine penny so resonant isn't just its existence, it's the questions it forces us to confront. How many other fleeting encounters between old and new worlds left no trace? Could oral traditions like the Micmac legend of floating islands with hairy people reference forgotten meetings with Norse sailors? The coin is a whisper of possibilities, of pelts exchanged for metal, of stories traded around fires, of connections made and lost in the vastness of prehistory. It reminds us that history isn't just written in grand monuments, but in small, overlooked objects that carry entire worlds within them. And sometimes the most profound truths come not from what we find, but from the gaps those finds reveal in the stories we thought we knew. Buried beneath the soil of a Mexican burial mound in 1933, an artifact emerged that shouldn't exist, a small terracotta head with unmistakably Roman features, its beard and hairstyle mirroring 2nd century imperial sculpture. Discovered at the Tekaxik-Calixtlahuaca site, this unassuming figurine has ignited a firestorm of debate. How could a distinctly Mediterranean artifact wind up in a pre-Columbian grave dated between 1400 and 1500, centuries before European contact with the Americas? If genuine, this head doesn't just hint at transoceanic travel, it shatters the conventional timeline of global exploration, suggesting ancient civilizations were far more interconnected than we ever imagined. The head's provenance is as puzzling as its design. Unearthed by archaeologist José Garcia Payon beneath 3 undisturbed layers of construction, its stratigraphic placement suggests it wasn't a later intrusion, but a deliberate burial contemporaneous with the site's post-classic occupation. Stylistically, it's a dead ringer for Roman workshops: the close-cropped beard, the delicate laurel wreath, even the facial proportions align with statues from the Severan dynasty. Thermoluminescence dating in the 1990s placed its firing between 900 and 1300 CE, long after Rome's fall but still 500 years before Columbus. How did it cross the Atlantic? One theory points to the Vikings, whose voyages to North America around 1000 CE are well documented. Could a Norse trader have carried it south into Mesoamerica through indigenous trade networks? Others propose Phoenician sailors, renowned ancient mariners who might have ventured far beyond the Mediterranean. But the most tantalizing possibility involves the ocean itself. Natural currents like the Canary and North Equatorial Currents, which could theoretically carry a shipwrecked vessel from West Africa to the Americas in weeks. Roman merchant ships, though not built for open ocean travel, occasionally strayed beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Could one have been swept across the Atlantic, its cargo, including this figurine, eventually traded inland? Skeptics argue the head is either a colonial-era forgery or a post-contact item that somehow contaminated older layers, yet the thermoluminescence results complicate this view. While not infallible, the technique measures the last time the object was heated, and its margin of error can't account for a 500-year discrepancy. Even more intriguing, the head's hollow construction matches Roman votive figurines designed to hold offerings, a feature unlikely to be known by a modern hoaxer. The artifact's true significance lies beyond its origin. If authentic, it forces us to reconsider the dynamism of ancient trade. The Olmecs left behind African-looking colossal heads. Sweet potatoes native to the Americas appear in Polynesia by the year 1000. The Tacaxic head might be another thread in this global tapestry, evidence that sporadic, accidental contact between distant cultures was more common than records suggest. Every unexplained artifact like this whispers the same humbling truth. History's map still has blank spaces waiting to be filled, and sometimes the smallest objects hold the biggest surprises. In a vault at Yale University, a single piece of parchment has divided historians for decades: the Vinland map. At first glance, it's unremarkable, a faded, wormhole-riddled sheet depicting Europe, Africa, and Asia with medieval accuracy. But turn your gaze west past the edge of the known world, and there it is, a jagged landmass labeled Vinland, accompanied by text describing Norse voyages to this island around the year 1000. If authentic, this would be the earliest known map showing any part of the Americas, predating Columbus by nearly 5 centuries. But here's where the controversy ignites. Since its public debut in 1965, the map has been accused of being one of the most sophisticated forgeries in history, a web of ink and parchment that could rewrite our understanding of medieval exploration or expose our desperation to believe in lost chapters of the past. The evidence for authenticity is tantalizing but fragile. Radiocarbon dating places the parchment between 1420 and 1440, aligning with the map's stylistic elements. The depiction of Greenland is strikingly accurate for the era, matching Norse sagas that describe its icy contours. Even more compelling is an inscription near Vinland that references Bishop Eirik Gnupsson, a real historical figure said to have traveled west around 1120. These details suggest knowledge that wouldn't be widely available to forgers before the 1950s, when Norse sagas like the Saga of the Greenlanders were translated into English. To believers, the map is a smoking gun, proof that medieval cartographers recorded Norse discoveries, preserving them in monastic libraries until the modern era. Yet the case against the map is equally damning. Advanced microscopy in 2018 revealed traces of anatase, a titanium dioxide compound not used in inks until the 1920s. The wormholes, initially seen as proof of age, perfectly match those in a medieval book the map was bound with, suggesting they might have been artificially added to mimic decay. Even the Latin script contains anachronistic phrasing, like the use of Oceanus Occidentalis for the Atlantic, a term rare before the 16th century. The most likely scenario, a mid-20th century forger, armed with just enough historical knowledge to craft something plausible, but not enough to avoid subtle mistakes. But what makes the Vinland map so endlessly fascinating isn't just the question of its authenticity, it's what it reveals about our relationship with history. Forged or not, the map reflects a deeper truth. The Norse did reach North America, as proven by the archaeological site at Elance Orks Meadows. The map's power lies in how it crystallizes the gaps between what we know, what we suspect, and what we long to prove. It's a Rorschach test for historians, where some see confirmation of Viking glory and others see a cautionary tale about the allure of discovering what we already wish were true. Perhaps the real lesson of the Vinland map is that history's most disputed artifacts often matter less for what they are than for what they make us confront. They force us to ask how much of the past is fact and how much is the stories we've grafted onto it. Whether medieval masterpiece or modern hoax, the map endures as a mirror, one that reflects not just the contours of a lost world, but our own hunger to fill the blank spaces on the edges of understanding. And sometimes that's where the most revealing discoveries lie. Consider the Islamic Golden Age, a dazzling epoch between the 8th and 14th centuries when scholars in Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba pushed the boundaries of astronomy, medicine, and mechanics. In the House of Wisdom, polymaths like Al-Jazari designed elaborate water clocks and automata centuries before European clockmakers matched their precision. His book of knowledge of ingenious mechanical devices detailed machines so advanced, modern engineers still study them. Yet when Mongol armies sacked Baghdad in 1258, the Tigris ran black with ink from destroyed manuscripts, and countless innovations vanished overnight. The same pattern echoes across civilizations, Rome's concrete formulas fading as the empire crumbled, or the burning of Alexandria's library erasing untold scientific works. These weren't just losses of objects, they were ruptures in humanity's collective memory. War wasn't the only thief of progress. Sometimes knowledge slipped away through sheer neglect or secrecy. Take Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's ultimate naval weapon. Its recipe was so closely guarded that only a handful of artisans ever knew it, passed down orally like a sacred rite. When Constantinople fell in 1453, the secret may have died with its last keepers. Similarly, medieval guilds often hoarded techniques, teaching apprentices through demonstration rather than written manuals. If a master died unexpectedly or a workshop disbanded, their expertise could evaporate like mist. The Viking Ulfberht swords, with their inexplicably pure steel, might owe their disappearance not to invasion but to a single blacksmith's lineage fading out. Religious and political suppression played its part too. The Spanish Inquisition's crackdown on Islamic and Jewish scholars in Andalusia scattered thinkers who had preserved ancient Greek texts, disrupting centuries of intellectual continuity. In China, the Qin dynasty's infamous book burnings in 213 BC targeted Confucian texts, but collateral damage surely included technical manuals and innovations now lost to time. Even the Library of Congress fire in 1851, though more recent, underscores how fragile knowledge can be. Flames consumed tens of thousands of works, including irreplaceable Native American language records. Yet the greatest losses might be the quietest. Everyday technologies, farming techniques, textile dyes, midwifery practices, often vanished simply because they weren't deemed worthy of recording. The Roman architect Vitruvius wrote of cranes so efficient they could lift columns with minimal labor, but their designs survive only as vague descriptions. How many other labor-saving devices faded into obscurity because they were considered common knowledge, not worthy of parchment? Oral cultures faced even steeper odds. Polynesian navigators who crossed thousands of ocean miles using star paths and wave patterns left few written guides, leaving modern researchers to reconstruct their methods from fragments. What emerges from this tapestry of loss is a humbling truth. Progress isn't inevitable. For every Antikythera mechanism preserved by chance, countless breakthroughs likely evaporated without a trace. The past isn't a steady climb toward enlightenment, it's a landscape of peaks and valleys, with entire plateaus of understanding swallowed by time's shadows. And that's the real question these artifacts leave us with. Not just what we've lost, but how different our world might look if even a fraction of that knowledge had survived. Would we be centuries ahead? Or would those lost innovations have sparked entirely new paths we can't even imagine? The silence of history offers no answers, only echoes. These 30 artifacts aren't just relics, they're time capsules of human ingenuity, each one whispering a tantalizing question: how much have we forgotten? From the Damascus swords that could slice through steel without dulling, to the Antikythera Mechanism's celestial calculations, these objects force us to reconsider what ancient civilizations were truly capable of. But here's the humbling truth: for every mystery we've uncovered, there are countless others still buried, their secrets lost to war, decay, or the simple passage of time. Think about the libraries that burned the scrolls of Alexandria, the manuscripts of Baghdad, each one a graveyard of ideas we'll never recover. Or consider the craftsmen who took their techniques to the grave, their methods never written down because they were taught hand to hand, generation to generation. The Viking navigators who read the stars like maps, the Roman engineers who built roads that still stand today, how many of their breakthroughs vanished simply because no one thought to record them? And yet, these puzzles aren't just about the past, they're about us. Every time we stare at the Voynich Manuscript's undeciphered pages or hold a replica of the Baghdad battery, we're confronting the fragility of knowledge itself. Progress isn't a straight line, it's a winding path with dead ends and detours. The fact that we're still trying to reverse engineer Roman concrete or replicate Greek fire proves that brilliance isn't confined to the modern era. It's a spark that's flickered across millennia, sometimes catching flame, sometimes vanishing into the dark. So what's the takeaway? Maybe it's this: history isn't a book with all the answers in the back. It's a conversation, one where we're still listening for echoes of voices long silenced. Every undiscovered artifact, every untranslated text is a reminder that the past still has stories to tell, if we're patient enough to hear them. Now it's your turn. Which of these mysteries fascinates you the most? Do you think we'll ever crack the code of the Phaistos Disc? Or will the Ulfberht sword's forging secrets remain locked away? Drop your theories in the comments, and if you're hungry for more deep dives into the shadows of history, hit that subscribe button. After all, the next great discovery might be just one excavation away, and you won't want to miss it. Until then, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, sometimes the most profound truths aren't found in what we know, but in what we've yet to